All right, let's jump straight into this explainer. Have you ever felt like you pour hours into studying really complex rules, stuff like accounting or medicine or law, only to have it all just slip completely out of your brain a day or two later? It is literally the most frustrating feeling, right? Well, today, we're going to fix that. We're going to combine the foundational mechanics of double entry bookkeeping with the actual cognitive science of active recall to show you how to truly lock in dense information. Welcome to the Ledger of Learning. So here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the bookkeeping of memory, then move right into debits, credits, and blurting. After that, we'll hit journals, ledgers, and the Feynman technique, followed by the trial balance test, and we'll wrap it all up with balancing your brain.
All right, part one, the bookkeeping of memory, taking a look at passive versus active learning.
Just like a business has to meticulously track every single transaction so their financial memory stays intact, you, as a student, have to actively encode what you learn. You can't just cross your fingers and hope to knowledge sticks. Look at the stark contrast here between two very different cognitive processes. Recognition is basically what happens when you passively read a textbook or highlight notes. It feels super familiar, so your brain kind of tricks you into thinking, oh yeah, I know this. But honestly, it's like glancing at someone else's bank statement. It makes total sense right then, but you didn't do the heavy lifting yourself. Recall, on the other hand, is like writing your own journal entries from scratch. It absolutely forces your brain to retrieve the information, which science shows is exactly what builds those strong neural connections.
Moving on to part two, debits, credits, and blurting, the rules of recording.
So the crucial takeaway is that if you want to master really dense rules, you've got to totally ditch passive reading. You have to embrace the struggle of retrieval. It's actually supposed to feel hard. Take a look at these golden rules of accounting. Every single transaction transfers value, right? And it's all based on whether the accounts are real, personal, or nominal. Like real accounts, which are basically your assets, go up with a debit and down with a credit. Nominal accounts, dealing with expenses and revenues, do the exact opposite. But just staring at a dense table like this, yeah, that's not going to magically commit it to your long-term memory. So how do we actually memorize it? We use a technique that top-tier students absolutely swear by, the blurting method. It's a bit brutal, but man, does it work. Here's what you do. Study the topic for 20 to 40 minutes. Then, and this is absolutely crucial, shut the book entirely. Put it away. Grab a blank page and just write down or literally blurt out every single rule, definition, exception, whatever you can remember. Once you're completely drained, open your notes back up and grab a red pen to mark your mistakes. It is a harsh reality check because it instantly exposes what you actually know versus what you only think you know.
Okay, so once you've blurted all that raw data onto a page, you need a way to categorize it. This flowchart breaks down personal versus impersonal accounts, which then split further into real and nominal. Visualizing these structures, like picturing natural persons over here and real assets over there, it really anchors the data in your mind. It gives all that abstract information an actual shape, perfectly setting the stage for our next technique. Which brings us right to part three. Journals, ledgers, and Feynman, organizing knowledge. So we've blurted out the basic rules, we've found our weak spots. Now we need to organize it all. Just like an accountant processing raw data through a cycle to make it actually useful. Enter the Feynman technique. It is legendary. The whole philosophy boils down to this. Teach it like you're 5. Named after the brilliant physicist Richard Feynman, this method absolutely forces conceptual clarity. Instead of hiding behind fancy accounting jargon, try explaining a transaction, like debiting equipment and crediting accounts payable, using simple, everyday words to an imaginary 5-year-old. If you find yourself stumbling or using buzzwords as a crutch, boom, there's a hole in your understanding and you know exactly what you need to go back and fix. And here's how this plays out in practice. On the left, we've got journal entries. That's basically a chronological diary of what a business is doing every day. On the right, those exact same transactions are sorted by category into ledger accounts, your classic T accounts for things like cash or capital. Here is the really cool part. Just as a business transfers daily actions from a journal into a categorized ledger, your brain does the exact same thing. When you combine that Feynman technique during your day with solid sleep at night, your brain actively consolidates those short-term chronological facts into an organized, permanent filing system.
All right, part 4, the trial balance test, verifying the books. After actively recording and categorizing everything, you gotta verify that your internal system is actually accurate, right? That's exactly what businesses do at the end of a financial period, and that is where the trial balance comes in. By definition, it's the process of equalizing the total debit balances and credit balances in your ledger, just to prove your math is right. It's an essential sanity check. Because think about it, if the debits don't equal the credits, you know immediately that you messed up somewhere.
Your books are completely out of balance and you have to go hunt down the error.
You can see here in a standard trial balance how meticulously everything is sorted. Assets and expenses naturally sit on the left with debit balances. Meanwhile, capital, liabilities, and revenues hang out on the right with credit balances. When those two bottom columns match perfectly, you've proved the core accounting equation is perfectly intact. But how does this apply to your brain? Like, how do you actually know if your own memory is in balance, or if you've slowly been forgetting key details over the last few weeks?
That takes us to our final section, Part 5, Balancing Your Brain Long-Term Retention.
So how do we run a trial balance on our own memory? Because let's face it, forgetting is just a natural part of being human. We need a systematic way to test our recall. The ultimate answer here is spaced repetition combined with active recall. You might know this as the Anki system. It basically acts as a continuous daily audit of your brain. Here are the golden rules. First, make your flashcards actual Q&A style, not just passive lists of facts. Second, you absolutely have to test yourself before flipping the card. No cheating. Third, trust the spaced repetition algorithm. It's designed to show you cards at increasing intervals based on how well you know them. And finally, you've got to review them daily without fail. If you get the answer right, awesome, your mental books are balanced. If you forget, well, it's an error, and you correct it right then and there.
So, by treating your own study habits with the exact same rigor and structural integrity as a double-entry accounting system, you are guaranteeing that every single ounce of cognitive effort you put in gets permanently recorded in your ledger of learning. The real question is, the next time you sit down to tackle a difficult subject, are you just going to passively recognize the words, or are you actually ready to balance your books? I really hope this explainer has completely flipped how you look at accounting and your own memory. Thanks so much for watching.